Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're sort of stepping away from the usual policy focus. We're going to stare directly into a mirror, really. We've got this set of sources, and they're not about data, not budgets. They are just brutally challenging ethical questions. And they're aimed right at the individual, the person working inside these big, sometimes compromised systems, companies, governments, you name it. This isn't some abstract philosophy class. This material, it's designed to make you, the listener, feel pretty uncomfortable. It forces you to confront that specific moment, that clash point where your job obligations smash right into your personal conscience. Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is really to boil down that core conflict, fitting in versus standing up, and maybe understand why these sources seem to think silence itself is a form of action.
That's exactly it. That's the key distinction here. These sources, they don't just ask, what's good in theory. They hit you with, what must you do right now, right this second? We see something wrong. It moves way beyond theory into like immediate moral action, a mandate almost. They really challenge that sense of safety we get from institutions, don't they? Reminding us that, well, those structures are just built from individual choices, one after another.
Yeah, individual choices. Okay, so let's start where the source material begins. Where those ethical wires first get tangled. Allegiance. I mean, for anyone trying to get ahead, that need to fit in, it's almost primal, isn't it? So the sources kick things off with that basic conflict. How do you fit in? Simple question. But then, bam, the follow-up. Do you follow orders or do the right thing?
Right, and that following orders defense,
Yeah.
I mean, historically for ages, that's been the shield, hasn't it? The institutional safety blanket. But what's fascinating here is how these sources completely reframe loyalty. They suggest allegiance to a dodgy system is like a kind of premeditated moral debt.
Wow. Premeditated moral debt. That's a heavy phrase. What exactly do the sources imply by that?
Well, it implies that by taking the perks, the salary, the job security, the career path from an institution that might be compromised, you've sort of, in advance, put down a moral deposit. You've implicitly agreed, maybe without even realizing it, to look the other way later, or at least to keep quiet. And the source uses that idea to just completely take apart the notion that following orders gets you off the hook. Responsibility-wise, it asks very explicitly, does following orders absolve you of responsibility for your actions? And the answer for these sources, it's a hard no. Absolutely not. If you're the one pulling the lever, it's your hand doing it. Doesn't matter who told you to. Responsibility, they argue, is fundamentally non-transferable.
That really raises the stakes for just fitting in, doesn't it? It's not just about professional conformity anymore. It's like you're asked to give up your moral agency right at the door, voluntarily. And once that sinks in, well, the pressure to just keep your mouth shut must become huge. Which brings us neatly to the next phase the sources tackle, that internal battle. Keeping quiet versus, having the integrity to speak out. The sources shift from general duty to something much more personal. Courage. They ask you point blank. Do you dare speak up? Do you dare ask difficult questions? This is really about choosing conflict, isn't it? Choosing the hard path over just convenience.
Precisely. And this is where you often see that slow chipping away at principles, all for, career expediency, getting ahead. The sources get that these big systems, they rely on voices, often educated, professional voices, to kind of legitimize what they do. So the pressure isn't just to be silent. Sometimes it's to actively help manage the narrative, spin things, and the material confronts this head on. It gives a very specific professional dilemma. Are you a journalist or a government mouthpiece? But that question, it isn't just for journalists, right? It applies across the board. Any profession. Are you really serving the core truth of your job, like the engineer building something safe, or the accountant reporting honestly, or are you serving the power agenda? Often, those two things just don't mix. They're mutually exclusive.
And the sources hammer home that this choice, it has ripple effects way beyond your own desk, right? They draw a direct line from personal gain to potential harm for others.
Oh, absolutely. The stakes jump from just sort of personal integrity to actual public safety. The source asks, do you compromise your principles? Okay. And then, straight away, are you endangering others for your convenience or career? That connection is key. It shows how every little compromise makes it easier for the whole system to cause bigger harm. And often it's your silence that enables it. The source even defines complicity here. It's not just active participation. It's passive knowledge that allows harm to continue, just knowing and doing nothing.
Okay. Here's where it gets really interesting because, well, we have to talk about the ultimate fallback, self-preservation, survival mode. I mean, if the system you're trying to critique starts pushing back, getting hostile, the natural human instinct is to protect yourself, protect your family, your job, and the material sees this coming. It anticipates that defense and just cuts right through it, brutally direct. Do you break principles to protect yourself, and does that make it okay?
That is the question, isn't it? The absolute core of ethical survival in these situations. And the sources, they push us to really examine the control mechanism itself. They demand we separate external pressure from our own internal choices. They ask you, the listener, directly, are you censored or do you self-censor? And that distinction, it's vital for you, the learner, to really get your head around. Because external censorship, that's the system attacking truth from the outside. But self-censorship, that act of choosing silence for safety or status, well, in the source's view, that's a voluntary surrender. It's giving up your moral strength. And it's insidious, isn't it? The system doesn't even have to lift a finger to silence you anymore. You do the work for them. You become your own compliance officer, basically. That internal choice is framed as a much deeper failure than, say, fighting back against external pressure and maybe losing.
Right. Wow. Okay, now we need to tackle the extreme end of this because the source material doesn't just stop at career compromises, it ramps up the stakes to the absolute maximum. It uses a scenario that basically demands immediate, unavoidable action, forces the ultimate confrontation. The source just throws down the gauntlet with this line, "You are part of a machine committing genocide."
Yeah. That sentence, it's meant to hit like a shockwave, obviously. But it serves a really critical structural function in these sources. It acts as a kind of framework, a lens for understanding all levels of systemic ethical failure, not just the absolute worst-case scenarios. It sort of exposes the underlying gears, the operating mechanisms that allow even smaller moral slips to happen. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the source uses this extreme example to show how bureaucracy can function in these situations. How do ordinary individuals end up participating in horrors? Often it's through compartmentalization, right? Focusing only on their little part, the admin detail, the logistics, the paperwork, and deliberately not confronting the whole picture, the total harm being done. That's what allows, say, the accountant to believe they're just processing invoices, right? Even if those invoices are funding something morally monstrous.
So the lesson from that extreme example is neutrality just isn't on the table. Not when the machine you're serving is fundamentally corrupt. So just, quote, doing your job without asking questions. That becomes the final seal on complicity.
Exactly. That's the argument. If you know about profound wrongdoing, then simply keeping your head down, staying in your position to maybe influence things later, or, just staying silent to keep collecting that paycheck. The source interprets that as actively assisting the crime. No matter how small your specific task feels, the system, as presented here, demands you stop being passive. Full stop.
And the response required by these sources, it's not gentle advice, is it? It's laid out as a direct four-part call to action. It tells the individual exactly what they must do when faced with a compromised system. And the imperatives are stark, really clear. Do your part, speak up, break free from the machine. The time to act is now. It's immediate, it's aggressive, it rejects delay, rejects forming committees, rejects waiting for someone else to give permission. Just knowing about the wrongdoing is presented as the only trigger you need for action. Yeah, and synthesizing that is important. Yeah. Because it raises a key question. Why such urgency? The source demands immediate action, like you said. It completely rejects passivity. It actually redefines what ethical responsibility is. It's not just about avoiding bad actions yourself. It's about actively preventing or stopping the wrongdoing done by the collective once you're aware of it. It's a total rejection of the idea that ethics can be put on hold or, handed off to the HR department or the compliance team. It's personal, and it's now.
So, okay, what does this all mean? For you, the person listening right now, maybe you're getting ready for a team meeting or looking over some strategy doc. Ultimately, these sources, they place the entire weight of moral choice squarely and, unapologetically on the individual. You, the takeaway seems to be, silence isn't safe harbor. And knowing about systemic wrongdoing demands immediate, proactive, and potentially quite sacrificial action. Your moral standing isn't about your good intentions, apparently. It's about what you demonstrably do when faced with systemic compromise. We've explored the source's pretty demanding perspective, the heavy price of complicity, and the difficult, immediate path to speaking out. The source states unequivocally, the time to act is now. We've seen the choice often comes down to compromise your career or compromise your principles. So here's a final thought, the tension these sources leave us with. If the imperative is to break free from the machine, how do you actually do that? How do you execute that break without sacrificing the very platform, the power, the position you might actually need to affect any real change from within. That tension between a clean break and trying to work within a flawed system. That's maybe the toughest question these sources leave you, the listener, to wrestle with yourself.